Debasis, maybe let's get started with the webinar. Debasis, can you hear me? Debasis, can you hear me? I think is I am just checking with Debasis on the other WhatsApp just to see what has happened. He was here just a moment back.
Hello. Okay. I'll start. Hmm. Hello, everybody. So welcome to this Blazor Learning Series. This is the second episode on Blazor Learning Series. Today we will discuss about the concept of Blazor along with the Razor syntaxes. I'm Debasis Saha. I'm basically working as a solution architect in V5 Soft and also a CSAP Corner MVP and Microsoft Certified Trainer. So in today's sessions, we will discuss on different topics regarding the Blazor framework. First, we will discuss a small overview about the Blazor framework. If you want to learn about the details of the Blazor framework, then you need to watch the second previous episode where we have already discussed the details about the Blazor framework and concept and everything. Today we just discuss some recap part so that everybody can connect with the Blazor framework and can understand that what is the concept of Blazor. And then we will discuss about the Razor syntaxes. What is the concept of Razor syntaxes, how we can use, and also we'll see that in a particular Blazor project, how we can use different concept or flavor of Razor syntaxes, like how we can create class objects or conditional statement or loop statement, everything. So before going to start, so this sessions will contain both theoretical and practical. So first we'll discuss about some theoretical parts and then we'll start along with the practical demonstration. So before going to discuss about the Azure syntaxes, first we need to understand about the Blazor framework. So what is the Blazor framework? Blazor framework Microsoft first introduced in the year of 2018 along with .NET Framework 5 or say and then it basically is used to develop a applications or any type of web-based applications which is an open source and also can be developed on the single page based applications. So Blazor framework is quite similar, uh, just like a other client side applications like which can be developed by using Angular or React. But one of the major benefits of Blazor framework is that in the Blazor framework contains both the part means in the client side framework when we develop any web application it basically contains only the client side applications. We can design our UX, UI, everything, and for the backend part we need to invoke the different APIs, and that backend part need to be developed in any different languages like by using Node or by using C# or anything. But in case of Blazor, if we use the Blazor framework for developing any web-based application, then we have two different types of project in the same solution. One is the front-end side or the client-side applications, and another is the server side. So by using the same framework, we can develop both backend and front-end. So it is much more easy to or better to handle as a single project. And the Blazor basically that's why Blazor contains a two word. One is a browser, which represents the client side framework or client side applications, and the Razor. Razor syntax basically represents the server side or server side application. So combination of these two words is basically the derived the word Blazor. So in Blazor, we can use different types of languages like C#, HTML, CSS, everything. So by using C#, we can develop the backend support code, backend side code, and by using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we can use the front end or client side applications. Blazor can execute the Razor views directly on the client browser, so it does not require to recompile and convert anything. So whenever we derive any Razor views in the Blazor applications, we can directly execute that views in the browser and it rendered the HTML directly. So also at the same time, as I have already said that in a particular Blazor framework, we have a both type of applications like server side and client side code with the help of C#. So we can use the same app framework for developing the both side of applications like server side and client side. And also we can use the same class or code as a shared code or library so that that code, shared code or library can be used in any other projects. So this is the graphical representations of the Blazor framework, how it works. So whatever the C code or views we are develop, write down those codes are normally rendered or executed in the browser. And for the backend part, it basically Blazor.NET standard assembly execute that WebAssembly part and then it rendered to the DOM. So before going to start about the Blazor framework or work on the Blazor framework, first we need to understand the benefits or advantages of this framework. So by using this framework, we can develop any type of single page or spa-based application, just like React or Angular or Vue or any other client-side framework. The development process by using the Blazor framework is much more faster. We can use the reusable concept or the open source functionality both in case of Blazor framework as well. Blazor provides a server-side rendering along with the client-side rendering, so it will reduces lots of work for as a development point of view. It provides the component-based architecture for building the reusable UI sections. So we know that for any client-side framework like Angular, React, or Vue, currently the component-based architecture is one of the best architecture to follow to develop this spa-based applications with reusable components, so that that same component or parts we can use in multiple web pages or web sections. The same concept is also applied for the Blazor framework. Also, by using the Blazor framework, we can implement the forms and validations, everything. As a C part of the CSAP framework, it can also support the dependency injections, routing. We can publish and can reduce the app size by using the different functionalities like bundling, minifications, etc. As a Visual Studio, Blazor framework provides a rich intelligence and tooling options, and also live reloading in the browser during the development. It is also possible, and we can run any applications which is developed in the Blazor for any other or older version of browser. Basically, the minimum requirement for run any Blazor applications is the WebAssembly. If that particular browser supports a WebAssembly, then that particular browser can easily execute or load that Blazor-based framework-based applications. But if as a user we are using any older browser versions which does not support the WebAssembly as well, in that case also we can run that applications with the help of asm.js files, and that can be handled by the Blazor framework itself. So the question is when we can use the Blazor framework. So if our target users who are the target user who can support use the browser such which can support the WebAssembly, then obviously we can use the Blazor framework. In another case, if we are wanting to use the Blazor framework for desktop or mobile except the web, however, this function is still in preview mode because right now in .NET Framework 6 version this is not available, and it is available in the .NET Framework preview versions. But we need to use this either Electron or Web Windows in this scenario. So we require some third-party tooling options to implement this part. Also, we can use the Blazor server app of any type of intranet or internal application. So this is the totally server-side based applications which can run from the server and load in, and only the client side is rendered in the client user machines. Also, if the application does not require any many concurrent user, then we can use the Blazor server app. This is the one of the criteria or combinations where we can use the Blazor server app. If that we don't have any much large number of concurrent users, maybe one or two or few number of users, so then we can use the Blazor server app. So it is ideally better for a scenario where we develop any web applications for our any intranet based or internal uses. If the application requires a large volume of concurrent users at a time, suppose I want to develop such applications which can be used by a large number of users at a time. In that case, the best choice is the Blazor WebAssembly. So in case of Blazor, actually there are different types of hosting model. So by default, the most two popular hosting model is the one is the Blazor WebAssembly, another is the Blazor Server App. So both are the different types of hosting model. And as per the requirement or as per the scenarios, we need to choose which hosting model we need to use in case of Blazor applications. So if we are going to use a applications which may used by a large number of users or large volume of user, and then in that case, Blazor WebAssembly is the best option, because in case of Blazor applications, WebAssembly entire applications will be cached in the client web browser and run from the cloud browser as a client-side application. So it will much more better, and it will reduces huge load from the server also. Also, if we want to implement any offline based or PWA based applications, in case we also use the Blazor WebAssembly part, because when we developed any Blazor WebAssembly, this functionality is automatically available. We can enable this functionality anytime. So one of the major benefits of this is that if the particular client machines or user machine is disconnected from the network services, then also that user can use the applications in their local cache versions. So these are the major benefits or user scenario where we can use the Blazor. So when we developed any applications in Blazor, most of the cases we need to develop either the front end part or the client side applications or in the backend side applications. For backend side, obviously we are using C# code, but for developing the front end or client side applications, in case of Blazor, we are normally using the Azure syntaxes. So before going to use seeing some practical example, first we need to understand what is the Raja syntaxes, how we can use it. So Raja is basically is a markup, one type of markup type syntaxes. We can say that, and which is embedding in the .NET framework and based into the web pages code. So by using Raja syntaxes, we simply can design a web page, and when this code is executed in the browser, that entirely Raja syntax is converted or translated into a HTML part as a syntaxes and load as a HTML code in the browser. So Raja syntaxes basically consist of the markup languages by the combinations of two different languages. One is a C# and another is a HTML. So with the help of these two languages, Raja syntaxes is generated. The files containing Raja generally have the extension of CHTML file extensions. The default Raja language is always HTML. Rendering HTML from Raja markup is no different from rendering HTML from a HTML file. But the only difference is that HTML markup is in the extension of CHTML Raja files, which is rendered whenever any server part is not changed. So in case of Raja syntax is very much simple programming syntax state, which can be embedded in a web page by using some server-side code. So Raja syntax is totally based on the ASP.NET framework. Raja syntaxes can provide the power of ASP.NET. So, but using a simplified and learning process is very easy because there is a basic using the ASP.NET or C# concept. So whenever we using the Raja syntaxes in a web page, we can describe those pages by as a HTML page with two kinds of content. One is the Raja HTML content and another is a Raja code. HTML content is basically contains the standard HTML tabs and standard HTML code, and a Raja code is basically contains some C# code within that HTML file, which is basically the server-side code. So basically in a single file, we can write down two different types of programming language. One is HTML languages and another is the C# or Raja code. When the server read the page, this page, it basically first runs the Raja code first and then before it send the HTML page to the browser. So during the executions, it first read the Raja code, and then after that, whatever the HTML related code we have write down in that particular page, it will convert it or visible in the browser. The code which is executed on the server can perform any type of tasks which cannot be done in the browser. For example, accessing a server's database or calling an web API or say executing some database access layer, something like. So which cannot be done by using the HTML syntaxes or JavaScript syntaxes. So those can be done in a single file by using these Azure syntaxes with the help of HTML files. And also by using the server-side code, we can create the dynamic HTML content on the fly. So if we require to create or generate any dynamic HTML content, we can generate it by using these syntaxes. So while we're writing the Raja syntaxes, we have to follow some protocols or guidelines. Like Raja syntaxes support C# languages and always uses symbol to transition from HTML to C#. Because we are normally write down the same both different types of code, means HTML codes and C# Raja syntaxes code in a single file. So when we start writing the code, we need some identification that from this line the Raja syntax starts, or from in up to this line the Raja syntax is executed, and then where the Raja syntaxes start and end. So that identification or markup is done by the symbol. So Raja evaluates C# expressions and render them in a HTML output. So whatever the C# expressions we have written down within that symbol, that Raja syntax markup area, those code will be rendered as a HTML output. When an symbol is followed by a Raja keyword, reserved keyword, it transitions into region specific markup, like @ code, something like. So otherwise, this transition into plain HTML part. So first, seeing this example, first I'll create a Blazor app based applications, and then we'll start and discussing about the result syntax code. So for practical purpose, I'm using Visual Studio 2022 and .NET Framework 6. So once in Visual Studio, I'll click on create a new project. In that project, we can search by the keyword Blazor. Whenever we select the Blazor, we see that there are two different types of applications here. One is the Blazor server app, another is the Blazor WebAssembly app. So initially we are selecting the Blazor WebAssembly app. I'm not selecting the server side app for this demo. I'm selecting the Blazor WebAssembly app. After selecting this, we can click on next. Select the target locations where we want to select this session and demo on Azure. So I'll provide the project name and then click on next. So in the next button, we have a framework that is right now it is using .NET Framework 6.0. And also there are some other checkboxes that configure for HTTPS, ASP.NET Core hosted, progressive web applications, do not use top level. So right now I'm not changing anything. I'm just selecting whatever the options is default selected. I'm keeping that same as it is. I'm not making any change here. And then click on the create button. So whenever we click on the create button, it will automatically create a project. That particular project is contained only one single project, that is the WebAssembly project, which is basically the client part. In this project, there are different syntaxes we have. Some of the standard pages is already added. And if we run this code into the browser, I'll just simply run this. So it will build and start the running. So here each and every Razor syntax is in case of Blazor. This file is basically extension is a .razor extensions. Okay. So if we open any of the Razor files here under the pages directory, because there are two different directory. One is a shared, which are used as a common directory for shared page, and the independent page, which is using as a under the store exists in the pages directory. So this is a simple page where different menu applications is automatically working. So this is the default template which is provided by the Visual Studio for any Blazor based applications. Okay. So now if we open any of the pages under the pages folder, say I'll open the index page. So in this page, we can find that it contains some HTML code like this. These are the purely HTML code, H1 tag, some text, and also there are some title or some other tag is exist. But this tag is not a part of the HTML languages like page title or survey prompt. These are not a part of the HTML tag. So these are the customized tag for the Blazor framework. So today we will not discussing about this part. Later of this series, we will discussing about these syntaxes, how we can create and how we can implement. So today our main focus is to use the Razor syntaxes or learn how we can use the Razor syntaxes in a particular client side page. So in case of Blazor, if we are using any particular page as a part of my application, then that page must be start with the page directive. So this is the page directive, uh, which identified that okay, this is the particular page, and each and every page directive contains a absolute URL or route URL. Okay, as this is the index page or the default page, that's why there is nothing is mentioned, only the slash sign is input, that is it is indicating that it's a default route. But if we want to use any other page, then we need to use that according to the route. And as per the route concept, it will navigate. So right now I'm using on this index page because already in this application there are 3 links already created. So will use those links as per our requirement. So now in this part, I'll copy some. So this is basically for the page title. So this is a examples of some regex syntaxes. So as I have already said that in case of regex, we can write down both HTML code and the C# code in a same file. But obviously when we start writing some HTML code and then after if we wanting to write down some C# code, then we need to provide some area identification that from this line of code our C# or server side code is started, and that is mentioned by this @ sign. So for any symbol part is basically represents the regex syntaxes. Okay, so if we are wanting to write down any C# based code like defining functions, defining class, defining variable, assigning some value in the variable, that entire part needs to be written down within the part of @ code section. So this is my entire area where I can write down my server side code, whatever server side code. So if we check this, this is a very basic server side code where I have defined one string variable and assigned some value there. Also, I have defined some method there which basically convert that string variable to a uppercase format. And also I have defined one another method which returns some message in my console log. Okay, so this is the basic standard. And also at the beginning, if we forget about these lines of code, I'll comment it out. So there is only a simple HTML tag is used. So now if I run this application, so automatically whatever the message we have displayed here, that will be visible. That will be displayed here automatically. Okay. Now in the server side part code, I have defined some variable name and assigned some value within that too. And we want to display this variable value, name value within the HTML code by the help of HTML code. So if we want to display any variable value within our HTML code, and if that particular variable is defined under the code @ sections as a server side or C# code, in that case, we need to use that variable name within the HTML code by the @ sign. So here @ is a syntax which denote that this area is basically contains the server side code or C# code. And within that part, if we are you defining some variable and we want to display or use that variable in the HTML sections, then we simply need to write down the variable name along with the @ sign. So whatever the variable name we have defined under here, that also available as intelligence part, and that can be said used. Okay. So once I write down that and click on save, I simply refresh the page, the same text is automatically appeared here. Similarly, if we provide something here, say title Blazor Learning Series. So if we are modifying anything on the client side or server side code, then we need to either using the hot reloading or need to rebuild the solution, because for server side part we need to rebuild the applications, but for any client side or HTML related part which does not require, we can execute or refresh our applications at the runtime directly. So as I have defined another variable, so that's what it is using. So now say I will using one h2 tag and at providing title. I'll using the h3 tag. So automatically the same contents is appeared. Similarly, if we want to use these convert functions, that okay, this name is we need to call some functions where need to pass that value as a parameter in the from the HTML part, that also we can do. Like here we have created it. I have created here one functions called convert to upper, which basically takes one string value as the input and return the value into a uppercase. Okay. So now if I want to display the name in uppercase or any text value in the uppercase format, then I simply need to call that particular function name and pass the value. So in that case, the logic is same. If you are calling or using any variable or function, whatever, your that particular name should be used by using the @ sign. So my function name is convert to upper. So that's why I am using here @convert to upper, and within the function name, I am passing the name variable. But the one thing is difference is that when I using the name variable, here I am not using any @ sign, because name variable is not part of my HTML. I have written down this code within along with the HTML code, but this name variable is a part of my one Razor syntaxes. This is my Razor syntaxes, and within that I have passing this variable. So that's why I am not using this @ sign. But if this name variable need to use along with some HTML code like this, then we need to use the @ symbol. So if I refresh the page, okay, actually I'm not save it. So once I save and refresh, automatically it is refreshed and the content is updated in the browser. Similarly, we can perform the same type of concept by using any type of calculations or operations like this. Suppose if we have a two different value, static value, and we want to calculate some arithmetical operations like plus, minus, anything, then that also can be done within by using the @. So in this case, it will directly added the number and display it here. So for that, as I have a static value, so that's why I am also required to define any functions in my server-side code. But if I want to define some functions in the code with along with some business logic, that can be done just like this. I can define any functions, and that functions can be invoked from anywhere. So if we same want to invoke any functions by clicking on the button, that also can be done. Like here we have defined one method called write console log, and that particular console log need to be called when a particular button is invoked. So that can be done just like this. In a particular button, we have a one server-side client event that is on client on click @ on click, and against that we need to provide the function name just like this along with the @ symbol. Or we can directly define these types of inline functions here. So the two buttons is already appeared. So if we inspect the element here and say inject increase the some font size, I'll clear it out. So first I click here, I click me. So whenever I click, the message is automatically printed here because as per the code, if when we click this button click event fire, this message needs to be displayed. But at the same time, when I click on the second button, the message will be different because in both the method, we have returned or displayed different types of method. So in this way, we can call any type of server-side event or which is written under the C# code in the same file as the register syntaxes, and that can be invoked against any event like this. So similarly, these types of code along with we can also create different types of other systems like flavor. Like we can define classes, we can define functions in the classes, and can invoke those functions. Just like example, say if I copy this, copy for that part, I first need to create one model class. So I'll create here one folder first and call model. So I'll create one class file called product, and within that product class, we are defining some properties like product code, product name, launch date, stock quantity, etc. Now I'll open the counter page and remove whatever the contents is written down here. We will not using those contents, and I'll replace the content here. Okay. We'll discuss it about later. So as we are using this product class, it's required to take the references. So we can use the references also, just like other. So we can write down the classes. We can take the references of the existing classes from my current projects or any other external library, just like a normal C# class. So in this example, we have created one class called string utilities. And within that class, I have defined a one static method called convert to upper, which basically doing the same operations that it will basically doing the upper conversion. It takes input value as the input parameter and convert the value as the upper parameter. And at the same time, I have defined another class, model class, which we have defined under the model folder. That is the product class which we have already defined here. And I am trying to create an instance of that class object with defining some static value. Okay. So these are the some sample of the C# code. Now our objective is to display this data in the view part. So as this is a simple title variable or is a variable, so we can display this value by using the @ sign just like this. So this is you all know. But see, in this class also, we have defined a class method, and within the class we can create a method to convert to upper, and we want to call this because in the previous example we have directly defined the method within my server code block, but here we have defined a class property or class object, and within that class object we define a function. So that means for accessing this function we need to invoke the class first. So the process or the rule is same. Whatever the server-side code you want to use, first use the address sign and then the or name of that particular server-side code. So for this accessing for this class object, I'm using that address string utilities and then dot convert to upper. So whenever you click on the dot sign, it provides all the server-side related intelligence, to just like the sysap files is provided in Visual Studio. And once you execute that, it will automatically display the data along with HTML. So if we run these applications, so we are using this example under the counter file page. So I need to click on the counter page. And so this is the original value. So both are the same. So if I want to change this value, just I'll stop the applications and change the nature of the Blazor framework file, so that the original text and the result can be differed, so that we can understand that this method is calling properly. So it is displaying the letter in uppercase. Even sometimes if we require to debug the code, or so we can use the breakpoints here automatically. So the debugging process is quite similar, just like sysap. You can put the breakpoint, and then after we can debug the code here. So if we are not getting some result as per expectation, we also can debug the response. Similarly, if we want to display this product class objects in my view, then also we can use this type of code. Like as here the product is my object, server-side object, so we can access all the property of that product class by using the @product keyword. Okay, so whenever we are clicking this, automatically all the property under the product class is available, and it will be available to display the data. I'm removing my breakpoint so that it will go faster. So those informations can be done or can be displayed. So basically, Razor syntax is quite similar with the sysap syntaxes. For the server-side code, we are simply writing the sysap code, and in the HTML part, when we need to use that sysap code or Razor syntax very well, or class objects, anything, or functions name along with HTML, we simply need to follow this @protocol. That whatever the objects we have defined under the server-side code, we can access those variables or function of name or methods or class objects, everything by using the symbol. That's all. Similarly, if we require, we can create some external class functions and then we can use it here. So if I want to use another store this class under a method under another class, like say, as for example, if I create a one new folder here for helpers, and within helpers, I'll create a class file for string utility, and within that class files, if I create a class properties like this, one server-side simple code which takes the input value and returns it as a title case. For that, I'll write down everything in small letter so that we can clearly understand it. And we can uncomment the code. and we can use the variable since it is under the same. So both the name is conflict because here also we have a class called Spring Utility. So better to rename that file. Spring extension. I'll put the name. So obviously this namespace will not available. So we can simply using this namespace by using the taking the reference here. And now if we pass the value, you can see that the data has been converted as per the logic we have write down. So that can be done. So this is the another example how we can create classes and methods within the class object and can invoke them. Similarly, we can use different types of iterations in case of index page. So I'll remove my open the fetch data page and remove the rest of the okay, just keep the page title and rest code I'll remove. And for that part, first I'll write the server side code here so that we can understand what we are trying to create here. So here actually I in the server side code I create a list of product object, and in that object we have initialized the method that is on initialized async. So whenever any Azure syntaxes or Azure page invoke, those pages always contain some lifecycle hook. About those lifecycle hooks, we'll be discussing in detail in the coming episodes. So on initialized async is a method which always used when the page is initialized. So that time it will automatically invoke. And it always have a two different types of method. One is the async method and it's a normal initialized method. So here I am using the async method. So that's why I am using a task to delay this. And then within that part, we are defining the values for that list of objects. Those all are the hard-coded values. Okay. And I have defining this. So now our objective is to display this entire data in a tabular format. So obviously, in a case of CSAP, if we need to display this list of data, obviously we need to use some iterations. So now, but in case of HTML syntaxes, HTML does not provide any type of logical operator or loop operator. But as we are using the Azure syntaxes here, so we can embed our server-side syntaxes related to loop or iterations in case of along with my HTML code. But remember, in case of iterations, it only support for loop, not no other loop, not while loops or anything. So I have simply copy one condition here simply create a one table object first and define the header. And within the table body, I have run a for each loop. This is the only one iteration which is supported. Okay. Just like sysub. So at the rate for each, and within that for each, we have defined the iterated project object. And then within the for each, we are defining the tier so that as per the number of records that each and every time this tier can be increased. And here we automatically using the @increase serial number because it is directly defined as a function here. So that's why I'm using this as. And rest of the other part is the part of my product objects elements. So that's why I'm using the @product.product code, everything. Okay. Okay. Right now we are, I'll remove this part and we'll be simply using this. And also using the contain very soon. as a flat or normal content. I'll remove this extra customized parameter. So now if we run this page, and click on fetch data, so the result is visible. So now if we see that the first line of content is displayed in red color and rest are in the blue color, because while I printing the tier, I have provided a conditional style statement that if product or the stock point is less than 10, then it will be red, otherwise blue. So this types of inline conditions or conditional statement we can use directly here. Similarly, if we require to use some other in conditions like that, it contains some delay, because when we load the page, it basically wait for 5 seconds and then it insert the data here. So what we are wanting here, when the page is loaded and if this data product object is null, then it will display some message like data is loading or fetching data, like these types of message, loader message. So that can be done by using a standard if loop. So that easily can be added here. Okay. So just like for each, we can also use the if statement, and as per the different conditions, we can plot or render different types of sets of HTML. So within the if statement, we can render write down our own HTML or the related HTML segment. Just like that, if products is null, then it will display the fetching data from server like this message. And once the data is prepared or the product contains the data, it automatically plot the table. Okay. So now I'll go back to the home page. Just check I said, yeah, I have saved data. And again, click on the fetch data. Okay. So after certain time durations, it will automatically display the data. Okay. Maybe there is something which will be deleted. I just need to restart the page. See, the message is coming, fetching data from server. And after 5 seconds, once the data is loaded, it automatically appears. So these types of conditional statement we can also use in case of regex syntaxes. So this is some example of. Also, in case of regex syntaxes, we can use some inbuilt styling part, like say, if we want to display this product name in a bold format, then we can use one pattern called, say, markup string pattern within along with the regex syntax. So for that, whatever the CSS styles or a custom attribute you want to add in your text C# code, that you can add like this here. We have added part. And then for that rendering sections, you just need to add @ markup command, string command, into that sections. So for that part, you just need to do on which page that entire code must be after at that symbol in work. So that's why. Yeah. So if you want to display some inbuilt style along with your text, maybe uh, just like a dynamic HTML content, which we said that we can render the dynamic HTML content also. So if we have some HTML code and we want to render that in our view per part, then in that case, we just need to use the markup string attribute along with that variable name, and then it will automatically display as per your HTML string. So now if we run this application, we'll take 5 minutes to load. See, both dot contains is in bold letter. And if we inspect the elements and check the HTML sections, we can see that it basically contains a simple TRTT with along with bold attribute. As in the code, we have provided the bold only for the first two, and for the third one, we are not providing anything, so therefore it is not visible here. So these are the different patterns we can use in case of Blazor framework. So whenever we develop any components or web part, anything in Blazor framework, we need to use these types of Azure syntaxes to develop that sections and Azure pages. So where both HTML and C# code need to use in this way. So that's all for today's session. Today we have already discussed about this demo sessions, how we can use the Azure syntaxes in Blazor project, class object structure, conditional statement, and loop statements. So all the code examples related to this Blazor learning series will be available under this GitHub repository along with this presentation PDF file also. So whoever required, they can download that code repository and use. In the next sessions, we will discuss about the basic architecture of a Blazor framework, that is the component. About component, we will discuss about the next episode. So that's all for today's session. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
There's a question by Recep in the chat, if you can read it.
Yeah. Yeah, large amount of concrete user means a bulk user. Means suppose if a instance, if there is a for a single point of time, maybe 1000 or more than 100 users. So maybe better to say that if more than 50 to 100 users, if you're using the application at a time, then it will better to use the WebAssembly, because in case of WebAssembly, entire applications is downloaded on the client machines. And so your entire application has been cached in your client machines, and then the application runs from the client machine by using the WebAssembly and WebSocket. So in that case, if I have a 1000 user at a moment, or 1 lakh, 10,000 user at a moment, then also my server will not busy too much. But if I am using a Blazor server app, in that case, entire applications will be rendered from the server, just like the traditional web application concept. So in that case, if there is a large number of users accessing the applications, then the performance will be deteriorated. So that's why in case of web application web assembly, it will better to use for a large volume of users. So if we are developing any applications which will be used by a employees by the organizations, and maybe at a time maybe 10, 20, 50 or 100 users will be used, then Blazor server is good, okay. But if we are trying to develop any application which will be a public application, just like Amazon, Flipkart, like that, that anybody, anonymous persons can be registered and use their applications, then it will better to use the WebAssembly. Because if we check, well, we stop the applications and run, we found that for the first time loading, when the browser is loaded, it will take some time because see, the application is loaded. It takes 2-3 seconds of time. Okay. But after that, the entire application will be cached. Okay. So if I click refresh here, we will find that here there is all the details about the application localhost, WebAssembly JS, browser link, and whatever the other component we are using, everything will be downloaded. And then after that, if everything will be executed from the client side, only it will access the server whenever the any server connectivity is required, like fetching data from databases that time. But for any pages navigation, like if whenever I navigate from this page to this page, at that time it will not hit the server, and then in that case server don't have the enough bandwidth. That's not will not required to load such bandwidth. So our server will be always free for accessing or sending, attending other requests like database activity requests.
Thanks for answer.